then oops, sorry. Thank you. If you don't submit on the two forms, like the portal and the form, then it might be considered late. So please make sure you submit both ways. Also this week, since you guys finished your project, we won't have homework or lab this week, so that's a good thing. So you guys can actually relax and focus on your other classes if you need. And then Thursday lab is, since we have our projects due normally, which is tradition in this class, that we select the top like 10 or so projects to present in class and show off their work because they put a lot of effort in it. And so tomorrow we'll be selecting people and emailing you guys if you want to present in class. And a bonus for everyone to show up is we'll be giving out 2 extra credit points for coming, and then we'll give you a midterm mid-semester feedback survey form that you have to fill out for the 2 points. So come out and support your classmates, and you could get inspiration from them too. So how Thursday is going to work, it's not going to be joining your individual TA links or Zoom calls. You're going to be joining this same lecture link. So keep in mind, this Thursday, join this link, not the individual TAs. And yeah. So yeah, let's just get into responsive design. So basically, you guys already know this, like we use our phones, we use our tablets, our laptops every day. And so the state of the internet is very, very diverse. More specifically, nearly 4.4 billion people have access to the internet today, which is more than half of the global population. And this is accessible from all different kinds of devices. Like I said, we have phones, we have tablets, we have laptops, desktops, we have freaking fridges and microphones that, or not microphones, microwaves that have screens now, which is pretty insane at this point. I don't know why you need a screen on these things, but sure, whatever. So we are definitely in the post-PC era. It ain't the 1990s, 2000s anymore. So this is a great read by Vox that they did a study how Apple's iPhone changed the world. It's a fun fact that phones are like used 49 or 50% of the time to access the internet by users, which is a crazy amount. So this is, I highly recommend you guys read this because it really shows how phones have adjusted our lifestyles today through technology. So a lot of you guys had like issues that you posted on Piazza or asked about in office hours where you say like, oh, like my project, my donut is here on this screen, but when I go to a different screen, like I submit, it looks different and it's somewhere else. And that all has to deal with responsiveness. So why won't my site work on all devices? Let's say we have a laptop that's a 1280 pixel screen, and then we have like 3 images of cat faces. They're all 300 pixel boxes. But when we go to mobile view, we can only see one of them. Which is weird because I want to see all 3 at once. But if we notice, like our phone screen is only a 300 pixel screen, and then the box is 300 pixels too. So that's why we only can fit one in one screen view. If you want to look at other ones, you'd have to scroll left and right of the screen, which is kind of unintuitive on a lengthy phone instead of a wide laptop screen. So things might look really weird if you don't adjust for responsiveness in your websites. Like I recommend you, or actually I'll just go through a demo right now. We'll use inspect element on your website on a computer to show you how it looks on an actual phone or phone screen. So let's see, let's just do our wd.io. So if you go to any website or whatever, we'll go to our homepage here and you inspect element. At the top left bar, you notice, actually, before I even get into that, I noticed a lot of you guys don't even know what this does. This icon at the very top left corner of inspect element, this selected element. It's so useful. Like it literally, you could highlight over anything, any element in the page, and it will show you like what it's called. And if you click on it, it'll tell you like it'll highlight that HTML code for you and show you all the CSS below that's like being used for this one element, which is super useful. It was really hard to show you guys like, oh, can you click on this icon? And you know, blah, blah, blah. So this is a super useful debugging tool when you have issues with your website. Okay, anyways, besides that, the next icon right next to it to the right is toggle device toolbar. And if you click that, you notice, what the fuck? You notice we'll go to a phone view. Right now I'm set on iPhone 10. There's also other like Galaxy, Pixels, iPhone, iPad, Surface, like tablets. And it's really helpful. Like I could just go to iPhone 5. I don't think this is what our website looks like on mobile, actually. I don't know why it looks like this right here. Yeah, I'm like 99% sure this is not our mobile view, but let's just go to a different website. This is a bad example. Stripe. Cool. As you can see, okay, so this is their original web view website. Really, really beautiful, super well organized, that Asia showed a couple weeks ago. But if you click on that toggle device button, this is their iPhone 10 view, or this is their iPad view, or this is their iPad Pro view. This is the Pixel 2 view. And you see it works so well for all these responsive screen sizes. And they have their cool things affected here. So this is how you can check to see if your website is mobile friendly. And it's a really great tool because it's inspect element. It's part of the browser's thing. It's built in. Cool. So another thing, another thing to test mobile friendliness is this link here. Is just Google mobile friendly test. If you go here, you can look up any like URL and it will tell you whether it's mobile friendly. I'm actually gonna try WDD this time. What? Mountain or hills? I think that's okay. Yeah, and they'll actually analyze the whole web page and show you like, is it mobile friendly or not? And I think it actually displays the mobile friendly view. So this is the truth test. Aha, yes, it is mobile friendly. See, this is what it should look like when you go on our mobile view. So yeah, it'll tell you whether it's good or not. That's a cool resource. And then, so why won't my site work on all devices? And the answer is pretty simple. All devices have different screen sizes and rendering engines. And by rendering engine, I mean like, rendering engine basically is unique for every single browser and things render differently. So basically the content designed for a laptop, because our laptop is wider than its height, it's not going to look the same for a tablet or a mobile view because that's longer in its height than its width. So things are going to look really, really weird. And yeah, so what does this mean as designers ourselves? Basically, we want to make sure our websites or whatever application we design work on all devices and browsers. Okay, maybe not like all devices because that's probably almost impossible to do because there's just way too many screen sizes out there. But if you get like, I would say like 90% or more, you're like there. So maybe not all devices or all screen sizes, but if you get most, like you're good. So as for responsive web design specifically, designing, a quote we have is designing websites for multiple screen sizes and devices so that there is an optimal experience for every user at every possible size. So someone who has a phone, who's viewing your website on a phone, should have the same accessibility and same experience or similar experiences as someone experiencing your website on a laptop or a tablet. And so responsiveness deals with three things, which is browser compatibility, screen resolutions, and mobile compatibility, which are the three topics we'll be talking about today. And yeah, so the first issue, browser compatibility. This is pretty important because especially for your final project, you guys will be deploying an actual website with a real URL that real people can access. So you have to make sure that people can access on all different types of browsers like Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Internet Explorer, anything else that exists out there. So basically, the ability of a website to function as expected on any web browser is the definition of browser compatibility. And each browser, like I said, has a different rendering engine, which is like the thing that displays your HTML and CSS code. So basically, in other words, your browser, every browser interprets your code differently. And what I mean by that is, if you take a look at this example, let's say we're using dotted border styles, you'll notice that a lot of these designs or styles are different throughout browsers. So here we have, even like throughout different versions of the same browser, we have Internet Explorer 7 and 8, they're like pretty similar. But Internet Explorer 10, they become circles. Chrome and Safari look very similar, but like Firefox has circles. Opera, which I don't even know what Opera is. But yeah, you can see like these rendering engines render things differently. And I had some students actually ask me like, oh, why does my color look different on different here than there, even though it's the same hex value or whatever. And it's actually because the rendering engine is different and unique for every single browser. So it's possible that things will look different from Chrome and versus Safari and vice versa, or other engines too. So we have a lot of vendor prefixes that we can use to like adjust and make sure everything is consistent throughout. You might have seen this if you like Googled certain like HTML or CSS code. We have like specific prefixes where it's like you see like -WebKit transition, -Moz transition, -O transition, and then just transition itself. These prefixes are added in front of like pretty unique or like common CSS properties like transition, so that we can ensure that these transitions will look the same throughout every single browser. So more specifically, I believe WebKit is for like Chrome and Safari. Moz is Mozilla Firefox. I actually don't know what O is for, but I mean, the more the merrier. So just for consistency purposes. So you can include these, but in another slide, I'll go over like, there's another thing you can do. Yeah, so, which is this slide. So there are some limitations to these vendor prefixes, and generally today they're not used as much anymore. Like I said, they're used mostly for common vendor prefixes like linear gradients, transitions, these things. They're just pretty common and people still use them. But for the most part, they are moving away from these prefixes and going towards the @supports in CSS or feature queries. But it's not really in the scope of this class, so I'm not going to go into it. But feel free to research on your own because they're pretty useful, especially when you want to actually deploy a real website. So yeah. A great resource you can use is caniuse.com. I'm not going to open it right now, but basically the idea is you could try any CSS property and type it in the search bar, and it'll show you what browsers are compatible with it. So in this case, we have, can I use transform for my browsers? And it'll show you all the green means like all compatible. And the numbers mean like the version number of the browser. So like Safari 14, which is the like newest one for macOS, like Big Sur, I think, that's gonna come out soon. That's like we see it's green, it's supported. Or even older versions of Safari, like 3.1 is all the way to 8 are supporting it. Same thing with Chrome 4 to 35 and the newest version 87 to 89. These, I mean, it's not really relevant, but as long as a lot of them are green, you're good to go. So this is a great resource to see like how whether or not these browsers support certain CSS properties or not. So the second issue is screen resolutions, and basically this is the size of your screen in pixels wise. So here's a great resource here. Whatismyscreenresolution.com. I'll actually open this one because this shows me I'm using a monitor right now, 24-inch monitor, I forgot. But my resolution is 1920 by 1080 pixels. And this is going to change with whatever screen you're using, like whether you're on a phone or a tablet or a laptop screen or a different size monitor, these are going to change. So it's great to see like how big your screen is when you're working on these things. So yeah, it's really important to understand that not everyone is gonna have the same screen size as you. Like I know, like as college students, for most of us, we have like the go-to is like iPhones and Macs. Um, but like not everyone's gonna have the same size. Like someone's gonna have a 13-inch, someone's gonna have 15-inch, someone's not even gonna have a Mac. Like that, you just have to know that the world doesn't revolve around you. Basically, that's the gist. So you must um, change know like how to change the size of the browser window, because that's how it'll affect the looks of your website. And how you do that, or before how you do that, this is an example of like, or a study in 2018 of January that shows like the percentage of people using a certain screen resolutions. As you can see, majority of people use, or not majority, like a third of people use 1366 by 768 pixels screen resolutions. And then the second, right after that, is what I just showed you, 1920 by 1080. So this is honestly not that helpful, because like so many screens out there have different unique resolutions, but it's good. These are good breakpoints to set when we later talk about media queries, which Nick will go over in CSS. So yeah, like I said, lower screen resolutions, use CSS media queries, and that's the programming side of this lecture today. So the third issue we'll be talking about is mobile compatibility, and this is probably arguably the most important issue that I'm going to talk about today. And basically, we want to design for mobile. That's just, if you don't take anything out of this lecture, design for mobile. Like I said, about almost like 49 or 50% of users today accessing the internet are through mobile phones, which is crazy to think about. So it's not just laptops or desktops anymore. So user interfaces for mobile websites are very different for those for desktops. And the three things I will be talking about for mobile design is screen size, touchscreen capabilities, oh my goodness, touchscreen capabilities, and performance. So here's a little chart that shows you the differences between the two. Like I said, for screen resolution for a desktop, we can see that our thing is wider in its width, right? But like shorter on its height. But it's the opposite for mobile, because it's longer on its height, but shorter on its width. So things are gonna, maybe you could do row stuff for websites that are on like laptop view, but for mobile, it'd probably be better to put things in columns. Input method for mobile is a touch screen, and then for versus desktop, it's like a mouse and a trackpad, whatever. And like, so touchscreen wise, like if you think about it, you're not really gonna use hover effects, right? How are you gonna hover with a finger? Like it doesn't track where your finger is right before you touch the screen. So hover effects, don't use them. Like any of these things, transitions, animations, like they're useless on a touchscreen, basically. Performance-wise, phones are very slow, which honestly can be argued today because they're pretty insane now, but still slower than a desktop or like a laptop browser rendering engine. So that's also a point to note. So as for screen size, like I said, it's much smaller than a desktop, and it'll only you can only focus on the content, and you should tuck away everything else. Because we're restricted on space, all the UI should be stacked vertically, like I said, column format instead of rows. We want to maximize width for our phone views, because in the first place, like we're not even given enough like a lot of width to work with. So we want to utilize as much width as possible, so that we can emphasize all the elements that we want to include on the mobile view. Like this is totally irrelevant for like web view on an actual laptop, because like you have more space to work with. But again, with the phone, we don't have much width, so we want to utilize as much as we can. So a bad example is our very own Daily Cal website. If you visit them, this website really restricts your view to read like news articles or things. If you go to their website, like you have a top bar, a nav bar that is fixed position, and then also an ad that is fixed position at the bottom. So you're not even, your phone is already small in general. Let's say you have like an iPhone 4, like that thing is tiny in screen size. But like with this, like we're already limited to now just 60% or even less of like that original screen size. So this little green box right here is the only thing we can see scrolling, while everything stays fixed, unless you like take out X, close the ad or whatever, but that's besides the point. Like, thank God these today, like our phones are longer and bigger, but still, like this is really bad design because we're already limited on space phone wise, and now we're limiting the space even more by like making more fixed content on top of it. So don't do this ever for mobile view. And it's great to understand how people hold their phones. This is very important for accessibility, which I'll show in the next couple of slides too. As you can see, 49% of people hold their phones one-handed and they use their thumbs to like do whatever. 36% of people cradle the phone and then use the thumb in the other hand. And then 15% actually use both hands to like do whatever on their phones. And it's great for reachability purposes or accessibility purposes because whether you're left-handed or right-handed, it matters like to understand where it, like what parts of your phone is reachable. So as you can see here, like green is good, yellow is medium, like that's a little bit reach, but okay. But like purple is just like, there's no way you're getting to that point with your thumb. Your thumb is not that long. So reachability does has this physical limit. So it's really important to understand where you're putting your elements that matter. Another example of this is touchscreen, because thumbs are less precise than like cursors, because cursors are like, they're on the spot, but our thumbs are so big, right? You've heard of the term fat fingering before. So it's really important to add padding or make certain elements big enough on a mobile view so that it adjusts to the size of people's fingers. Like, so like the most commonly used format of this is like through buttons, and it should be like on the bottom of the screen, because as you can see on this diagram, the thumb zone is the easy to reach parts, and then like the white part is like kind of far, but it's doable, and then the red is just like why would you put a button up there? Like, so this really improves reachability. So example of this is like, you're definitely gonna fat finger something like this, right, on the right of this image. This is way too small of a button for a finger to type to click on. Maybe a cursor is fine, but it's, again, we're on mobile view, we don't have cursors, and so we want to add padding to certain parts of the button so it's bigger, and there will be no cases of errors or like fat fingering for users, because that's bad experience for them. So again, overall UI elements should have accessible dimensions. So, and a really good example of how to utilize this effectively is Lyft. If you ever use their app, you notice that like all their action items, all their buttons and their input boxes are at the bottom of the screen, this thumb-friendly area. This is where we can reach everything, right? There's like very minimal things that actually are in the hard to reach areas, besides like profile and like coupon code, whatever. Like you rarely use that, because the most important part of Lyft is finding like a car to get a ride from, right? So they do a really good job with this, where they put their action items at the very bottom of the screen, so you'll never need to like have to like actually put your finger up to the top of your phone in order to do something. And it's like they utilize the rest of the space really well too. They show the nearest car, who you have as a driver in your route to the destination. Like, it's great use of space for mobile design. And another great design that Apple did back in 2014, I forgot which iOS version this was, but they, if you double tapped your home button, or for newer phones, if you like swipe down at the very bottom of the screen, it'll actually move the top half of whatever screen you're on or app down to the second half of your phone, so that you can actually reach to the top in case there's like a nav bar or a button up there that you want to reach, but you just can't. So this is a great reachability solution that Apple developed, and actually a lot of people still use it today. So yeah. Performance wise, the last thing about like mobile design is to understand the differences of performance from phone versus like laptop. Like I said, performance on a phone is roughly half that of desktop. Again, it could be argued because like phone chips are like really powerful nowadays, but still it's like not as good as a laptop. So this causes mobile websites to like render slower than what laptops do. So you generally want to minimize heavy JavaScript code that manipulate the front end looks. You want to avoid the use of transitions, animations, hover effects, these things, because they're basically non-existent. There's no case where you're hovering over something on a mobile view. And then mobile UI wise, it should be as simple as a click and scroll. Like there should be nothing fancy going on. Like maybe you could be a little bit more fancy with animations, whatever, on a real website on a laptop, but on a phone, all the user is clicking and scrolling. That's it. So there's no need for anything fancy, any like extravagant things on your website. So the solution to designing is mobile first design. This is the rule that most designers follow. It's they design for a small screen because once they design for a small screen, it's so much easier to expand into a bigger screen and utilize the elements that you already have for a bigger size screen. If you can imagine, like in this class, we're not gonna force you to design mobile first because like accessibility and responsiveness is like out of scope and it takes a lot of time. But if you design for a website first and you want to compact it down to a mobile view, you're gonna have a lot of elements you already work with. And then to make it like even smaller, you're gonna have to make a lot of difficult choices like, oh, this is kind of useless, or like, I'm not good. Do I need to include this thing or whatever? So always design for mobile view first and then expand it to web view because it's easier to work with what you have with a small screen and expand it from there instead of vice versa. So yeah, so part of designing for mobile first is to think about what's important, like visual hierarchy. That's one point that is really important. And you can also take accessibility to the next level with that. With what I mentioned, like phone screen reachability with your finger, your thumb, whatever, and then expanding that to an actual like cursor on a website, laptop website. So overall, like in summary, like designing for variation is very important. Like I mentioned, there's so many screen sizes out there. Like if you're gonna design in the future, you're probably maybe you're gonna design for a freaking refrigerator like screen. Like who would have thought a refrigerator would have a screen? You know, so make sure you're adjusting your stuff so that it's responsiveness to most screen sizes. And make sure your website works on all browsers. You can add the prefixes that I mentioned or the add support thing that you can look into if you want. And make sure your website works on all devices. And again, a lot of emphasis placed on mobile first design, not web first design, mobile first design. So that's very important to keep in mind. Cool. So that's basically the end of the design part today. Are there any questions about responsive design? Okay, you can type in the chat or unmute yourself, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, otherwise we'll take a quick break and we'll come back with Nick for the programming side.
Awesome. So welcome back. Now we're going to do the actual programming portion of this lecture. So we're going to show you how to implement the responsive designs that Howie showed earlier. So just a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to look at a couple of strategies that we already know how to use, and then take a look at how we can use media queries to better make our designs responsive. So to start, we'll do these strategies. So if you remember from week 3, we had this little Berkeley Food Guide website that definitely was not responsive. We have a couple of ways that we can modify it. The first being using percents, which we've already seen before, doesn't exactly line up perfectly. when we start shrinking the width. And the second strategy that we already know of is using a max width. So for example, you see here on the right side, we sort of just like shrink it down using a max width of 500 pixels. But obviously this is not ideal if we start shrinking it more, because it'll start looking somewhat like this, which we don't want it to look like that. You see here in the navigation bar, we have some issues. We also have the restaurant and coffee shop columns. They're lining up next to each other instead of being vertical like it should be on the right. And we also know how to use flex wrap, which does give us this sort of layout, but it's a bit less flexible, which is why we will be talking about media queries. So media queries basically allow you to write CSS specifically for different screen sizes, and we define different breakpoints that tell us like how big of the how wide of a width we want our properties to apply to. So right here, we have a couple of common breakpoints that you'll see, I guess, just across a lot of websites. If you take a look, they typically use these sort of breakpoints. So how do they work? Well, if we first take a look at it in the real world, you'll see here on the Dropbox website, they have two different layouts that are powered by media queries. The first of which is the desktop view in the background. And here in the foreground, we have the mobile view, which is the smaller width view that Howie talked about earlier. You see how everything is stacked up in a vertical direction, nothing is squished, and everything just looks great. So do we only need medias for a web page, or can we do more with them? There's actually three different things we can do using media queries, and we can sort them based on screens for computers, print for printed documents such as, well, a printed page that you would print off the internet, or speech, which is for like text-to-speech purposes, and many more. But before we get to that, let's talk about the HTML. So when you do use media queries in your code, you'll always want to include this one line in the HTML. You don't actually need to know what it means. You'll never need to change it, but just be sure to include this line in order for media queries to work, and in order for the responsiveness in order for your website to be responsive. Now, what exactly is a media query? Well, we put it within our CSS file, and we add this little wrapper around any sort of special code that we want. So what we see here on this page is that in the regular desktop version, assuming we don't have any media queries yet, the font size would be 16 pixels in all of the HTML. But we add this special bracket here, and then some of the CSS styling for the HTML inside. And this basically tells us that for screen widths that are less than or equal to 600 pixels, we'll want the HTML to be font size 14. Now, this works because, again, CSS is cascading, which means that basically the styles that are on the bottom take precedence over the ones on top, which is why this works. If we flipped it the other, actually, I'm not sure if it would work the other way around because they are cascading. But in this case, this would be the style that the bottom area would be the 14 pixels would be the style that takes precedence for widths less than 600, and everything else greater than 600 would be 16 pixels. And then we just have a couple other examples here. We could also use another breakpoint where we have 375 pixels and setting the background to red. This means that for any screen less than or equal to 375 pixels, the background of the entire HTML element would be the color red. And this would only apply for screen widths within this range. If it's like 376, then we would revert to whatever our initial property was. So what if we wanted to make it so that only computer screens so that our styles only applied for computer screens that were no larger than 600 pixels? Well, we could, okay, I think I'm missing a transition here. Well, we could use this line so that it only appears for a screen and this sort of dimension, which is max width of 600 pixels. In this next example, we want to do the same on a screen, except that we want to restrict our styles only to a width between 200 and 400 pixels. So we could use the and again to concatenate the screen and then the min width and the max width. which means that now any screen between 200 and 400 pixels will have whatever styles that are specified inside of this. So we're going to do a quick demo here. Let me know if you can't see my screen. I'm on a CodePen window right now. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we have a few things we want to do here. So let me actually pull up this one to show you what it should look like. So we see that we have a navigation bar here with a home, about, and contact page. And what we want to do is make it so that when we shrink the width to smaller than 700 pixels, oh, okay. I guess we need to fix this actually. Okay. Basically, what we want to do is make sure that this little circle, which represents our mobile navigation, appears for widths less than 700. And for widths greater than 700 pixels, we don't want that to appear. So going back to the code that is broken, we see here that we already have all the styles for the navigation bar and the quote unquote mobile nav. And we have our little structure right here. So we want to first start off by okay, 1 and 2 are flipped. Sorry. We want to start by making it so that for widths less than 700 pixels, we want to show this mobile navigation bar and hide this desktop navigation. And then our second task is that for widths of greater than 700 pixels, we want to make our mobile navigation hide, or will go away as we see here, or don't see here, and show the desktop navigation. So going off of what we just looked at, we want to start by making a media query with specifying for screens of less than or equal to 700 pixels. And we want to modify the desktop navigation. So we can grab the selector and use display none. We also want to make it so that this navigation, the mobile navigation appears. So we just do this and use display. You could use basically any display. I'll just go with block for now. And then for screens of greater than 700 pixels, we can do a similar thing. So I'm just going to copy and paste to make it faster. And then we want to show this and hide the mobile navigation. So now we see we're at a screen width of 700, more than 700 pixels. As you can see on the top right, we're at about 1000 here. And as we start shrinking the page, once we hit 700, our desktop navigation disappears and the mobile nav appears. And that's exactly what we want. Yeah, so one more thing. Also, another review, I think how we talked about this a little bit, you can actually click on this little button in Inspector and select a specific element to have it show up within the inspector. And also you can use the inspector to show or to go to preset widths that represent what you'd see on a phone. Any questions? Awesome. Well, yeah, that's going to do it for today. Thank you all for coming out.